Hello, my name is Mandy and I am the coordinator for the Handspun skeins competition at the Manitoba Fibre Festival. I wanted to take a minute to show you something about skeins because in our call for submissions we have some clear guidelines on what we're expecting for how you present your skeins, and I wanted to explain to you why we have those expectations. So here is one example of a looped skein. This one I haven't done up for presentation. Now, we ask that you do a figure eight, and I'll show you the figure eights in a minute, but I wanted to point out an example of what not to submit. In this one, I have used a contrasting yarn, mostly because it's what I had lying around, and I wasn't preparing this for presentation or anything. I just was tying it off so I could soak it, and I'm going to be knitting it soon anyhow, so it doesn't really bother me what color the tie is. But if I were to present it, I would want something that blends in better, is less obtrusive. So an example of that would be, if you were still wanting to use some sort of scrap yarn, is that this is my dog. This is purple yarn on blue, and there is a lot of purple in this color. It was called Blueberry Pie a la mode, so there's sections of purple in it. So the purple doesn't catch your eye very much. It blends in quite nicely. The other item I wanted to point out was that the length of it is meant to be just a good size for the judge when he or she opens it up. In our case, it's a she. When she opens it up and can easily look at the yarn, assess the twist and all that things, but just assess the yarn as a whole. If it's too short, it's going to be, you're going to have far too many layers of yarn thickness there to really assess the majority of the yarn easily. And if it's too big, then it's just really unwieldy. So we ask for 1.5 to 2 yards, and that's where this range is, which is 1.4 to 1.8 meters. And if you don't know what your measurement is, you can always do quick assessment. If you take double the length when you folded it in half this way, so this is, if I recall correctly, yeah, about 0.8 meters, which means it's 1.6 meters circumference all the way around. So that's a good length. The other item I was going to show you is that for presentation purposes, actually, and this isn't a requirement, so you can just use just a nice matching yarn, but my personal preference is actually to use the yarn itself. So in this example, which has not yet been soaked, it's fresh off the bobbin, I actually used, after winding around my skein maker, also known as my dining room chairs, I used the end and I went, I sort of unwound it a little bit, and then I would weave that at different points into my figure eight. And that way I definitely don't have any contrasting yarn. It kind of does contrast in this example because my yarn has multiple colors in it, blue or purple and yellow, and they are strongly contrasting. But the yarn that I've used is the same yarn, so it's all part of it. And what I've done in this one, I can see here's one of my ends. It's hard to show when it keeps twisting up on me. Here's one of my ends, and I'm not sure which, oh, there's my other end. And so it's got a figure eight here, which is actually from this starting purple end. I did that last. And there's a yellow here, and the yellow here. The yellow was the color I finished winding with, and a yellow figure eight tie here. So I'm going to readjust my camera and show you the figure eight ties, so we're clear on that. Okay, so I'm going to show you how, if you've never done a figure eight tie, how to do one. I'm going to use, for demonstration purposes, a strongly contrasting yarn. All you have to do is separate. I like to do, actually, it's probably a double figure eight. I always do in groups of 3. I've never done just a figure eight group of 2. And this is really handy when you are finished spinning. It helps keep your yarn in order, and it helps keep things from getting sort of folded back on itself. It just creates a really nice clean way of keeping your yarn together. So scooch myself back here. You're going to go, doesn't matter if you start over or under, I'm going to start going over the first third, under the second third, and I'm showing this much slower than I normally work, over the third third, and then under it to the end, and then over, and then under, and then I would tie it off here. And that's it. I would probably double knot that actually. And so then your yarn is kept in order. If while you're transporting it or moving it around or washing it, you know, if some of it ends up this way and some of it ends up this way, twist it up. It's really easy to see and fix that and put it back in order. Now, the other thing I was going to show you, since I did mention that I prefer to use the yarn itself, if I were to pretend that this is my working yarn, the technique's a little different. For one thing, when you start, you're going to have a lot longer length. So it's going to be a bit of a pain. And admittedly, it's when I'm working with freshly spun yarn and I'm doing this, my yarn has a fair bit of energy at that point, and so I just sort of let it crinkle up on itself and grab the ball of it and sew it through. But I would have the yarn coming across. So if this is my working end, I guess, there's something a little bit different you have to be able to do. So if I separate into threes again, roughly, I'm going to go over, but I'm going to have to always keep this here, because when it is the matching yarn, it's very easy for it to start getting lost with the rest of the skein. So I'm going to keep it here. Normally I still have my yarn on my chair backs held taut, so this is a bit unusual for me. That's especially necessary when it's fresh, and otherwise it's going to curl up on itself like the one I was demonstrating with earlier. I go over, under, over, back under it. See how I have to kind of sew it a little more? I usually have to bring more yarn through. Now the difference here is that I actually have to go back and catch this part here. Because if I don't catch it, then I would go on and I would do more of these around the skein, which I won't demonstrate because it's the exact same process. Be separating it in three, over, under, coming back around. When I come up through here, I got to make sure I catch it. Okay, because if I don't catch it, then when I come up back around, even if I've come up through here somewhere in my imaginary thirds, it's just not connected together anymore. It's not very secure. Everything's going to come undone. So you do have to make sure you catch it on your last pass there. And that's it.